Hey there guys, so how to get bigger and stronger. I'm just going to keep it really simple and just break it down into four big exercises that I find works really well, and go over the sets and reps as well as frequency and why I chose them. So starting with pull-ups, the reason why hits the back really quite well. It's a very simple, easy exercise to do. If you're not strong enough to do it, then I suggest you use the assisted chins machine in order to be able to get the reps that you need. Otherwise, if you don't have one of those, you might need to use the lat pull down. In terms of sets and reps, ideally, 4 sets of 10 works really quite well. Sometimes you might chase higher reps. In this particular set here, I hit 15 reps. The one prior, I go for more explosive type work, so the reps are going to be lower. In terms of frequency, twice a week is ideal. Keeping it to once a week is still going to work, but twice a week, even if you need to drop the volume from say 4 sets down to 2 sets, it's going to work. It's just having that exercise in your program is really going to help develop your back as a whole. Just works the lats really quite thoroughly and the whole of your mid and upper back. Then when it comes to shoulders, the one arm overhead press I find works really quite well. Again, 4 sets of 10 ideally. I tend to chase the higher reps. I'll chase 20 reps because after a heavy bench press day, I'm not going to put as much load through my shoulders, so I'd rather keep the reps really quite high. Now, in terms of additional muscles that this is going to work, it's going to heavily hit your triceps as well. You just need that elbow extension. It's also going to work your core really quite thoroughly because you're in a state of lateral flexion and then on the other side extension. It's an exercise where you really don't have to worry too much about your lower back, even though it may look like it's hard on the lower back. Like anything, you're going to start with a lighter weight, you're going to work up over a few weeks, and you're going to get a good feel for the movement. But the lateral, flexion is so much easier on the back than true flexion of the spine and extension of the spine. Flexion of the spine, a lot of people don't have issues with, but going into extension, especially with a barbell overhead press where you're leaning quite far back, that can irritate a lot of people's lower back and just give them not always an injury, but there is the possibility of getting hurt. It just doesn't quite feel right, especially when you have other heavy barbell movements in your program. You're going to want something that's not going to impact your lower back. So in that regard, the one arm overhead press works better. The 4 sets of 10, as I said, that's a general statement. Normally I only do this overhead press once a week, and that's simply because when you throw in heavy bench press and have that on an additional day, you're still working the shoulders and triceps really quite thoroughly. So you need to give yourself enough total recovery in between workouts. That's something that a lot of people get wrong as well in terms of trying to get bigger and stronger. They just try and throw too many exercises in. Having said that, I'm also going to go over some of the assistant exercises in another video. But the one arm overhead press, it hits the shoulders really quite hard, as well as the mid and upper back as well, because you can see it has to work really hard from a stabilization point of view. So there's a lot going on, just isometric contractions and the rest of it. And it also just teaches you how to hold position under load, which is another skill and just another way of working on your bracing as a whole. But definitely a very useful exercise. 4 sets of 10 once a week, ideally, I find works really quite well. Then the next one up after that is heavy bench press. Look, heavy is all relative. In a competition prep, I'll work up to a heavy single, and then I'll typically do my back off sets. For a lot of people, I recommend 4 sets of 8 to 10 reps for your main heavy pressing day. And then, break times, you want 5 to 7 minutes between sets. You want to completely recover. And also when you set up on this exercise, you just want to retract your scapula and really push your chest up. It will shorten the range of motion a fair bit, but you keep all the tension on your chest. You put your shoulders in a safer position. It's a lot harder to get injured. But these ones here, I'm hitting 10 reps. So yeah, 4 sets of 10, or 8s if you want, works really quite well. Then on an additional day, I'd have a light bench press day. Again, 4 sets of 10, but at 80% of the weight that you used. So if you're hitting 100 kilos for 4 sets of 10 on your light day, you want to hit 4 sets of 10 at 80. It's really quite simple. In terms of muscles hit, obviously it's going to hit the chest, shoulders, triceps. To an extent, it's going to work your forearms if you're actively thinking about gripping and crushing the bar in your hands. A lot of people don't do that. They just hold on to the bar and don't give it too much thought. And you'll also find if you're setting up correctly and pulling your scapula back, again, you're using a fair bit of upper back just from a stabilization point of view. And then lastly, on the list is squats. Now, I'm working up to singles because I've got, a competition. So these are just a few of the, heavy singles that I've done. In terms of rep work, for most people, I recommend anywhere from, 4 sets of, 6 up to 10. It really depends on the individual. I find squatting once a week heavy works really quite well. And when I say heavy, that's like your main squat session, hitting your 4 sets with the reps, and pushing yourself to, about a 9 out of 10 in terms of difficulty on the last set. Then later in the week, you can have a lighter squat day, and it's literally a light squat day, just a plate either side, 4 sets of 10. That's just more for speed and technique work and keep your mobility there and on point. But I found 4 sets was really all I ever needed. Then, with the traditional, squat, if you struggle to do that, you can always swap it for like a front squat if you want. That's going to hit a little bit more quad. It's really going to force you to stay upright. Again, the sets and reps stay the same. 4 sets is ideal. Or, another variation is the safety bar as well. So, you're holding the handles at the front. Again, very similar to a back squat. Not quite the same as a front squat, but pretty even mix of the two of them. And then again, if you have a really bad lower back, you might look into using a belt squat. Again, belt squat, you can really push the legs really quite hard. You don't have to worry about your lower back or upper back, giving out on you or your core. I find, a belt squat works really quite well, and I normally use that as an assistant exercise. But as I was saying, 4 sets of anywhere from 6 to 10 reps. Ideally, 8 a lot of the time for newer lifters. It works really quite well. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. Hit like and subscribe, and have a great day wherever you are.